Are you ready for some reading stats? Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Jazz and today we are going we are going completely through my 2020 reading. We've got stats, we've got graphs, we've got all of these books. So what I think we're going to do is go through the stats and charts and some like fun statistics, and then I'm going to tell you every single book I read in 2020. I have spent the morning finding all of these books, moving them upstairs so that I can show you. I reckon, let's dive right in. I don't think it needs more of an introduction than that. I'm going to show you some graphs. Okay, so the first thing of note is that I am using the reading log from Book Riot, which looks like this. I'm actually going to be using a different one for 2021 just for various specific reasons, but this one was really good and I'll link them down below, and I'll link the one I'm actually going to be using for 2021 down below as well. The 2021 one is made from Portal in the Pages, who is a booktuber, which is kind of cool. But anyway, yeah, right, let's get into it. So this is what the actual log looks like. You put in like the title, author, etc., and it goes all along there. That's ridiculous. I won't take you through this. I would go straight to the stats. So in 2020 I read a total of 77 books. I thought it was 76, but as I was doing my count this morning I realised I'd missed one, so good to double check. 77, wild. It says here I had a total of 0 DNFs, which isn't really true. I just leave them as currently reading forever, as opposed to accepting that it's a DNF. That's a conversation for another day. So the total number of pages I read in 2020 was, what is that number? 17,196. And then the total hours listened in audiobooks was 4 days, 16 hours and 59 minutes. That's wild. This is interesting. Average pages per day, 16.33. I thought that would be a bit higher. That's really interesting. Clearly I spread my reading out. And that makes for an average books per month of 6.41, which is also really interesting because I thought I was more of a like 4 book a month kind of a girl. But as we go on, you will see I'm not. It's higher. Who knew? Okay, so here's the first graph. As we can see, finished versus DNF. It says I have 100% finish rate. As we know, that is not correct because of my lack of ability to accept that I DNF books. Let's move swiftly onwards. So this is interesting, fiction versus non-fiction. So I've read 77.3% fiction and 22.7% non-fiction, which is 58 books to 17 books. That's really interesting. I want to read more non-fiction in 2021, so we'll see how that changes next year. This year, I don't know. The format is also interesting. So I read 71.4% print, or 55 books in print, and then 24.7 or 19 audiobooks, and then 3.9% or 3 digital ebooks. That I find fascinating because last year I read about 6 audiobooks, so I have like gone way up with that, and I think that is just going to keep continuing to rise, so that's really interesting. Audience, we've got 52.6% adult or 40 books, and then 39.5% YA or 30 books, and then children's and middle grades 7.9% or 6 books. This is slightly incorrect because I think I put my new adult books, I don't even know if I put them in with YA or adult, and I couldn't quite work out how to insert a new like category without messing up all the rest of the statistics, which is partly why I have switched spreadsheets. I'm not very good at Excel and spreadsheets, but in the new one I know how to do it, so that's partly why I've changed. Anyway, regardless, so take that with a pinch of salt. But it is interesting because like a good few years ago, maybe even last year, YA was like my top definitely. So I see my reading taste like shifting into more adult books, but with still like a pretty big chunk of YA. It's interesting. We'll see how it comes this year as well. These ones I'm not really going to go through because I don't think they say a lot. and I think I should have like done it, changed the categories nearer the beginning of the year, but I didn't. So like, for example, genre, that's not telling you anything. Like, it's just like every genre ever. So I'm doing this a little bit different next year. Lo and behold, fantasy was the lowest and contemporary-esque books were the highest. This I didn't track, so we're not going to look at that. Books by page count, this is interesting and doesn't surprise me in the slightest. So the biggest category there is 301 to 400 page books, which is 21, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest because that is the bulk. And then the next one being 200 to 300, yeah. Contemporaries, aren't they? Usually around that length. I feel like this would be really interesting to then compare people that read a lot of fantasy, because I feel like those are chonkers usually. This, again, I didn't track this correctly because of the issue where I couldn't insert new rows. I wish I was good at spreadsheets. So we're not really going to look at that. It looks like I used my library loads, but what actually happened was I just put all of my Scribd audiobooks in the library section as well. Yeah, so this one I'm going to be tracking a little bit different next year. Instead of just these sections, I'm also going to have a section for Ben's books, because I didn't really know where to put those, because it doesn't really feel like borrowed, because I'm not really borrowing them, even though I am, because they're in my house. And then I've added a Scribd section, and it's going to be a little bit better. This is really interesting. Books finished by month. So that's like a kind of very like all over the place year, I would say. My best reading month was May, where I read 9 books. That's wild. Quickly followed by both December and July, where I read 8 books. It's like, I can't believe I read that many. My worst month was November, which is only 4 books. That's not even bad. That's amazing. And then like a kind of average of 5 to 6-ish. Yeah, my average was 6 something, wasn't it? So that's really interesting. I'm really intrigued to see how that changes this year, if I'm going to be reading quite that level. Like, these were both pre-pandemic, where it was just on my regular life. So maybe it will stay vaguely the same. We'll see. Star ratings. I am a generous star rating giver. As you can see, the majority of 4 stars, that's not surprising, followed by 25 5-star books. I think this is really interesting because it's showing I'm really beginning to know my reading taste. I mean, obviously there are some, like, 15 3-star books, that's a bit sad, but like, on the whole, I'm really beginning to like hone in on what my reading taste is and whether I know I'll like a book. I'm not really reading usually books that I like kind of know I'm not gonna like. Okay, now we're going into a bit of representation section. So for the author's gender, we've got female authors 67.1% or 51, male authors 26.3% or 20, and then trans or non-binary authors 6.6% or 5. So that's a really interesting split, and this year, 2021, one of my big goals is going to be to read more trans and non-binary authors. Nation of origins, this is the nation of origin of the author. This is kind of interesting. So 49.2% are from the United States, 32.2% are from the UK, and then there's a very interesting split of everyone else. So we've got like Indian American, Dominican American, Swedish, I don't know why it says Sweden, Jamaican, yeah, lots of interesting. I think, what is that, about 20% not from the UK or US, which was one of my goals, to read books and authors that are not from the UK or US. So I'm like, that's kind of okay, but also would like to do way better. Would like to like take down that US one just a little bit and increase it with around the world. Yeah. Okay, and so now we're on to authors of colour versus white authors. So I read 53.2% white authors and 46.8% authors of colour. That's a pretty good split, except I would like it to be more in favour of authors of colour. And then this one is specifically about the protagonists, so protagonists of colour versus white protagonists. So 58.4% is books with no people of colour protagonists, and 41.6% is books with people of colour protagonists. I would like that split to be definitely way more in favour of books with characters of colour. So yeah, but not too bad. 32 books that had a person of colour as a protagonist, but I want it to be more. This is interesting. I thought this would be bigger, but clearly not. And actually, this is another one of my goals, and especially it's going to be reading like intersectionally. But so I'll just go through it. So queer authors, we've got 74% non-queer authors, 26% queer authors. I just thought that, I mean 20 books, but I thought that would be more, so that's definitely something I want to focus on next year. And then queer protagonists, 71.4% books with no queer protagonists, 28.6% books with queer protagonists. So yeah, again, I want that to increase. And then the final stats for you. Okay, we have books in translation versus not in translation, and 93.5% were not translated, and then 6.5% or 5 books were translated. This I find sad because I really was actively trying to read more translations, and 5 isn't a lot. I think one of the reasons is partly because I was reading widely, like around the world, and like books set in different countries, but that isn't necessarily to say that they will be a translation. So in 2021 I'm going to be focusing on both reading around the world and authors from different countries, but also specifically in translation as well. Yeah, so that is my stats. Not too bad, kind of interesting. Some things surprised me, some things didn't surprise me, but overall, like, not too bad. And I'm really intrigued going forward how my reading is going to change in 2021. Okay, so I've got my list up of books that I read in 2020. Stats are done. Let me have some coffee. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go through all of the physical books I have and then just kind of put the pictures up on the screen for the audiobooks, ebooks, books I've returned to the library, books I've borrowed from friends and no longer have, etc, etc, etc. Okay, this is a whistle-stop tour. I'm not saying anything about the book. I'm literally just going to tell you the title. I will link some wrap-ups down below, the ones that I managed to do in 2020, so if you want to know more about the books, you can go there. But yeah, let's go. So the first book I read in 2020 was The Last by Hannah Jameson. We have Karamo, My Story of Embracing Purpose, Healing and Hope by Karamo Brown. Queer There and Everywhere, 23 People Who Changed the World by Sarah Prager. Openly Straight by Bill Koenigsberg. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Beartown by Frederick Backman. With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. How to Have Feminist Sex, A Fairly Graphic Guide by Flo Perry. Welcome to Lagos by Chibundu Anuzu. Muslim Girl, A Coming of Age by Amani Al-Katabe. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This Is What Happy Looks Like by Jennifer E. Smith. We're on to pile number 2. American Royals by Catherine McGee. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. Honestly Ben by Bill Koenigsberg. The Life-Changing Manga of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. Infinite in All Perfections by Annie Fisher. The Clothesline Swing by Ahmad Dani Ramadan. Do What You Want by Ruby Tando. My Heart Goes Bang by Keris Stainton. Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. Slay by Brittany Morris. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing and A Beautifully Foolish Endeavour by Hank Green. All the Invisible Things by Orla Collins. Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. Layla by Prayag Akbar. The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. The Midnight Swimming Club by Emma Green. The Bible, or the Bi-Bull, Personal Narratives and Essays about Bisexuality. The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. What Happened That Night by Deanna Cameron. Who I Was With Her by Nita Tyndall. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. A Girl's Guide to Being Awesome by Suzanne Verdi. Run by Koji Keplinger. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas by Adam Kay. Girl Woman Other by Bernadine Evaristo. Last Christmas by Greg Wise and Emma Thompson. This Is Not the Jess Show by Anna Carey. And the final physical book, When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Okay, let's move on to audiobooks, ebooks, books I've borrowed from friends and given back, books from the library, books I've already donated. I think that's all of the vague sections of this. Okay, we have got Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo-Lodge, The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval, Pride by Ibi Zoboi, Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson, Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig, We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness, A Burden Shared by Jo Walton, Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, Love from A to Z by SKLE, Love from A to Z. I feel like when I say that book I have to say it in an American, I don't know. Let's move on. My Name Is Why by Lem Sasay, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer, The Versions of Us by Laura Bonnet, This Time Will Be Different by Misa Segura, You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, which I have the physical copy for, I just cannot find it, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amar El Motar and Max Gladstone, The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor, The Voting Booth by Brandy Colbert, Hangman by Jack Heath, The Subtweet by Vivek Shraya, Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson, Other Words for Home by Jasmine Wager, In a Dark Dark Wood by Ruth Ware, Where We Go From Here by Lukas Hosher, Not a Sound by Heather Gudenkoff, Booked for Christmas by Lily Menon, Sitting Pretty by Rebecca Tausig, and the final book, The Night Before Christmas by Clement Clark Moore. It's just a ridiculous book to end on. Okay, I ended up doing that in a weird way because I was going to do it in month order and then I didn't, and so I'm worried I've missed one, but probably haven't, and if not, it doesn't really matter. That was really fun, and that was kind of interesting to reflect back and see every single book I read in 2020 and which books I was like, meh, and which books I was like, oh, definitely want to be reading more of that in 2021. Thank you so much for watching. I love a stats video. I love watching stats videos, and it's just so interesting and so I don't know, fulfills my nosy nature to see what books everyone read. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will leave down below my favourite books of 2020 and my most disappointing reads of 2020. So if you want to know out of all of those books which ones were my favourites and which ones I was like, meh, you can. Go and watch those ones, they're down below. Yeah, until next time, I will see you in a new video. Bye. My Dark Vanessa. My Dark Vanessa. Vanessa, what is that? Why did I try and do this? I can't.